Okay, so I'm going to be trying something a little bit different today. I looked around on YouTube yesterday or the day before, and I didn't notice any tutorials that were geared toward whistle players or Irish music instruments that went over the basics of how to read music. A lot of Irish music is learned by ear, by listening, and so it's not required that you read music, but I think it's a good thing to know and to be able to at least have a familiarity with how sheet music works. So I figured I would go over it with kind of a whistle player's perspective, and hopefully it will be useful to some people. So the first thing I want to do is go over the. Hopefully, I'll be able to superimpose some of these graphics. um, but I have so the basic. You've got the treble clef is what we're looking at. So there's a treble clef and a bass clef. Treble clef if you're a soprano or an alto. If you're a girl and you sing the melody, like ladies generally are in the soprano and alto range, and so this is the line that they would be looking at, or the five lines on their music. And then you have the bass clef, which is if you're have a deeper voice and you sing tenor or bass, that's the line that you're looking at. So for whistles, melodies, things like that, we're generally looking at this treble clef here. It's also called the G clef because you can see this little spiral that goes around uh, the G line. So, and the musical alphabet consists of A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. So you've got 7 letters, and then you have sharps and flats. So all a sharp is if you've got a G and you want a G sharp, you play instead of playing a G, you go up a half step. Or if you have an A and you want to make it an A flat, you flatten it by half. You lower the note by half a pitch. Um, So you can see here the mnemonic they always give you in music classes is every good boy does fine. So that should help you remember the 5 lines on the treble clef. It's the E, G, B, D, and F. That top line is an F. If you can see, I put a C on the very bottom with a line going through it. That's called a ledger line, and that is middle C, and that's the C right in between the bass clef and the treble clef. So D whistles don't go that low; they go down to the D. So you can see the D right above it. So the D on your D whistle, you can see when you have all of the holes covered, you're playing a D, um, and so it's the space right below the E line. So the first line of the that you play that's shown there is your E. So, um, so yeah, so and then the spaces in between, you can remember it's FACE, face. Uh, and I don't think it's good to always. I mean, eventually, hopefully, you would get to the point where you can just see a line and say, oh, that's a B, or that's a D, or that's the C. Being able to recognize it quickly and not have to think about it and not have to go every good boy D, because that takes you too long, and it makes it where you won't be able to read fluently that way. So that's just a general orientation, and this treble clef is normally at the beginning, followed by the key signature, but I just put it there so you can focus on the letters. So every whistle, unless it's like a custom whistle or something, like a tin whistle, any one that you buy in the shop is going to play the major scale. Now the major scale, if you've seen The Sound of Music, the song where she sings do re mi fa sol la ti do a deer, a female deer, re a drop of golden sun. She is teaching the kids the major scale, um, and so the only like what you need to remember, and this is something that I didn't realize being a singer growing up. I didn't play instruments consistently throughout my childhood. I always kind of assumed that between every note there was a whole step, and obviously a half step, so you could do sharps or flats. But I thought that there were equal steps between each note. And what I found out whistles is your whistle. Every whistle key is playing the major scale, and what gives the major scale its distinctive sound is where you put these half steps. So if you'll see this graphic, the major scale has a whole step, and then a whole step, then a half step, and then 3 more whole steps, and then another half step up to the next do. So the spacing of those notes is important, because if you change them, it changes the sound of the scale, and it's no longer the major scale, it's something different. So the key of C is the easiest one, is the easiest major scale to understand, especially in the context of a piano. You can see that there's not a black key between every white key. There are 2 places where there's no black key, and it's because naturally between C, so if you go C, D, so let me grab, this is a C whistle, so it plays the C, is the do, so do, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. So I have a whole step between C and D. I have a whole step between D and E, but between E and F, it's just a half step. So on the piano keyboard, there's no black key between there. So every other note you can go, and then between B and C, so this between this note, that's only a half step. So the key of C just naturally falls into the major scale, because E and F are only a half step apart, and B and C are only a half step apart. And when I learned that, I was like, it blew my mind because I never realized that before. And then the piano keyboard made sense to me. And so what you're doing when you change keys is you're basically just adding sharps and flats to preserve that note spacing pattern. So the whole, half, whole, half. So when you change over to the key of D, like here's the C whistle, so this is C, and say I want to try to play the D major scale, I think, well, I'll just go up 1 note, right? So this is C, and here's D. You hear how that sounds completely different? And what it is what I've just going up 1, I haven't changed the spacing, because I'm still playing just C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. I didn't add any sharps or flats, and so what I end up playing is a relative minor, or a natural minor, I believe is what it's called. So you hear that sounds kind of sad, whereas the major stuff in major key tends to sound happier and brighter. So in order to do the key of D, I have to add in 2 sharps. So 90% of Irish music is in the key of D or G. So D is, you start on D, E, here's F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and then a D. And you can see on the C sharp, I anchor the whistle with my right ring finger. So some whistles you can even use all 3 fingers on the bottom. Some whistles I think it'll change the tone, so you just kind of have to experiment with whatever whistle that you have. So you can go. So that's the D major scale. And so you've seen, in order to, so let me go to this next graphic. So there's C major, and you can see on the right there's my treble clef sign, and then to the right of that, that's where the key signature is. So if you don't see anything in that key signature, it's assumed to be the key of C, which means there are no sharps and no flats. It needs no modification to play the major scale. So you can see on the keyboard where I put those red dots, that is the C major scale on the piano keyboard. So the next one, I go to D, and in order to maintain those spacings to give you the major scale, you have to start using the black keys. So you use so I have that whole step, and the half step is between F sharp and G. And so in order to get a whole step between E and F, you have to make it an F sharp. So so when you're looking at the key of D, you're going to have two sharps. You're going to have a C sharp, and then you're going to have an F sharp. So the F sharp's on the top because that's the F line, and then the C sharp is right there. And another thing to keep in mind is even though you can find another F on this line, see this bottom space is F, that's assumed to be F sharp. So sometimes if you're trying to find the key of something and you look down here and you see there's a clear space, you're like, oh, it's an F. You have to remember up here that F sharp applies to that bottom F as well. So that's D major. And then G major, you can see I've moved those dots, and G major almost perfectly falls into that pattern spacing, the note spacing, except for the F sharp. So it still has the F sharp, you just get that C natural in there. Otherwise, it's almost identical to C. And so Irish music, when I first started playing, and I saw some of these, when it started giving me stuff in the key of G, I didn't realize what I was needing to do. But all that means is that whenever you see a C, you're playing a C natural instead of a C sharp. So you're going to do that half holing or the cross fingering that I showed you earlier. It's really simple, and a lot of times you'll hear it in the song because it'll just sound wrong if you do the C sharp. So this is the key of B flat major. Just to show you a key with flats, this is a generation B flat. You can see the difference. It's much longer. I said it's a much mellower instrument most of the time, and you can use this to practice with. So I would recommend you get a B flat just for practicing to save the ears of those that you love. And if you are reading music, that's another nice thing about the whistle, is as long as you remember, if you remember that what the key, if you can read in the key of D, and basically where you know the fingerings are, you know this is D, you can read in the key of D, but use a B flat whistle. Because the fingerings are the same, it's just going to come out in B flat instead of in D. So it's handy. I mean, you can't do that when you're playing along with other people, but if you're reading sheet music, you can do that. You can play with whatever whistle you want. Here's a low E flat. So it's still that major scale. It's just been, this one has been lowered down to an E flat. E flat is the do. And then obviously a low D is just an octave below the soprano C, or the soprano D. And they call it a tenor D for the low Ds because it's lower. So here is the whistle chart with the fingerings. You can see that I basically, instead of I don't go all the way up to the third octave D. I stop at B because for all intents and purposes, B is the highest that you will ever need to go in traditional Irish music. I have a handful of tunes that I've played. I think most are more contemporary that have gone up to a C natural. So So starting on the low D, that space below the E line, so I'm at that next D, that second, that's why I put the pluses there. Then E. So every once in a while I have to go to a C natural, and you have to just half hold that one because the cross fingering typically doesn't work in that situation. But it's very rare that you have to go up that high. So if you can memorize the locations of those notes, I don't know exactly how many that, those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 notes. You can basically play just about anything, any of the traditional Irish tunes that you're looking at if you're visiting something like thesession.org, where you can look at the sheet music. It's very, very straightforward. So here's also the key of G. You can see it's the exact same thing on a D whistle. You've got this low D just under the E, and then the only change is that C natural instead of a C sharp. So you have to use you can either, again, you can use a half holing on that top. Just you can even see that. So half hole on the top, or I mean you can also probably do something like that, or you can use a cross fingering. So and so that's basically it. The next thing. So basically, like again, every whistle, here's an A. So A, here's the C. The B flat. And then the D. So the only reason in Irish music that you might want to have some other keys is because especially if you're playing with someone who sings, like there's some Julie Fowlis, Warren McAuliffe tracks where they play an E flat because they sing along with they sing in the song, and then they have a section where they play tunes, and I think they use E flat whistles on those tunes because, again, if I want to sing Amazing Grace and I pitch it, let's see if we can do B flat. So, amazing grace, how sweet the sound. You think, well, that's a little low. So let's raise it to let's try it in D. So, amazing grace, how sweet the sound. So you can see for voices in particular, if someone says this is more comfortable for me to sing in a little bit higher key, or you like to lower it, so altos might prefer it to be in the B flat, or sopranos would like it in D. So you can do that. And then if you're playing, obviously if you're playing outside of Irish music, you get things in E flat, and then I think Lunasa likes to play, or there are a number of groups that really like F whistle just because I think it's a very nice key for whistles to be in. But basically, if you learn the fingering on one whistle, and then you have the whistle for another, like you can pick up any key, any keyed whistle, and the fingerings are the same. It's just going to, instead of starting, like, so for a C whistle, it's going to start on that one note lower. Instead of starting on the D when all the holes are closed, you're going to be starting on a C, but it's going to play the same major scale, and that's the same. So like a low, the alto A that I played, this one is playing the same major scale. It's just going down below that middle C. You're going down just a couple more notes or so. So basically, it's just sliding that major scale up and down. So I hope that is enlightening. The second half of reading music would be going over key signatures, or not key signatures, time signatures. So going over for like which note gets the beat. So like 4/4 time, you're going quarter notes, eighth notes, half notes, and things like that. And I may cover that in a later video. But for now, I hope that you guys, I hope this was helpful for somebody. I'm probably not the best teacher, but I hope you get something out of it. So thanks for watching.